In this video, I'm going to work on sketch number 3 because it's going to allow me to do something I've been wanting to do for a while now. I'm going to use another recipe template. This time I'm going to use the circle lattice recipe template. And I'm going to use it to make a scallop border. I hope this turns out. I'm going to break down the sketch to its component pieces. As my usual, what I try to do about photos on these sketches is to come close, but not necessarily strive too hard for an exact match. But what I do care about is the background. So what I notice on this is a wide border, and I notice there are 3 bands of pattern paper. The lower band is 11 inches by 3 inches high on each side. The middle band is 11 inches by 4 inches high. And the top band is also 11 inches by 3 inches high. On the Creative Memories blog, you'll see that each of these bands is in a different pattern paper. But what struck me is this border. I think it's going to be fun to make it. I'm not going to use the border punch that was in the example layout. I'm going to use the recipe template to make the border. I'm going to choose the papers, and I'm going to choose 3 pattern papers. I'm going to call the top one pattern paper number 1, the middle pattern paper number 2, and the bottom pattern paper number 3. So what I've chosen is from Birds and Blossoms, the butterfly paper to be my paper number 1. And for paper number 2, this brown with a bit of fading design on it and little specks. It's the back side of the paper with the lovely birds and bird nests. Paper number 3, I will use the reverse side of the orange and use the orange paper. So paper 1, paper 2, and paper 3. So as I get ready to cut my paper, I remember that I have to have 2 pieces of each of the bands. And that means when I add the 3 inches plus the 3 inches for the orange paper, it's going to be 6 inches for the 2 bands on the left and the right. But I'm also going to be adding the bottom, which will be the butterflies, from the same sheet of paper. So that will be another 3 inches and 3 inches for left and right. So I'm going to be using 12 inches. Essentially, this whole sheet of paper will get used. The brown, I will need 2 4-inch by 11-inch pieces. So there should be 4 inches remaining when I'm finished. So I'm going to cut these bands by these measurements. The first sheet of paper that I'm going to cut is this brown. According to the sketch, I need 2 pieces that will be 4 inches tall by 11 inches wide. So I'm going to cut the 4 and plus 4 into 8. And I'm going to cut off an 8 by 12 sheet of paper. Now my cutting method may be a little different from some of the others out there, but I'll explain why I'm doing this in a moment. So I'm cutting 8 inches of the brown. I'm cutting away this last final piece. It will not be used in this layout. I'm putting it aside. Next, I know that I'm going to use all of this sheet of paper except a 1-inch strip. It's going to be 11 inches across. And as I mentioned earlier, I will use all 12 inches in this direction. So the first thing I want to do with this piece of paper and with this piece of paper is to cut it to 11 inches. I want to cut away the 1 inch that I'm not going to use. So now we have this 12 by 12 piece and this piece, which is 8 inches tall by 12 inches wide. And we know that all of the bands we're going to put on this layout are going to be 11 inches wide. And because they're going to be stacked with one another, I really wanted them to be the same width. And to get that, I'm going to cut them all together. So we're measuring this to be 11 inches, and that way we'll know all of the bands should be the same width. And now we're ready to cut 1 inch through both layers. And we have our 11-inch wide pieces of paper. Because it's on top, we'll next take our brown paper and cut it in half at 4 inches by 11. And now we have two 4 by 11 inch pieces of paper, and they've stacked up very nicely. Okay. And now we're going to have our 11 inches wide paper, and we're going to cut them into 3 inches each. Now, I'll be honest, I like cutting from the left side, so I'm going to cut the first one at 9 inches, giving me 3 inches here. Then I'll move my paper to 6 inches, which will give me another 3 inches. And finally, I'll cut again at 3 inches. And that will give me two 3-inch bands, which I can flip over. And now I have all of the bands. Our next cut is this beautiful blue paper that came from Welcome Baby Blue. And I'm going to use it to be the border from our sketch. We will need 2 pieces, and we will also want them to be 11 inches wide. So the 2 pieces that we're going to cut will be, for the left and the right, we're going to cut 2-inch by 11-inch bands. But I like to mat, and so I'm going to also cut 2 more 2 1/4 inch bands. I'm going to first cut this at 8.5 inches tall. 2 inches plus 2 inches plus 2 1/4 plus another 2 1/4. So that's where I get the 8.5 inches wide. And then once I get 8.5, I'm also going to cut next that 8.5 piece into an 11. And this piece will not be used. And now we will cut 1 inch off to get this as an 11-inch wide by 8.5 inches tall. This is a scrap. And so now we're going to cut 2 inches off. So we're going to make a 2-inch band and a second 2-inch band. And then our next piece, which actually is going to be the stripe, we're going to cut it at 2 1/4. And that should leave us with another 2 1/4, and it does. So here is our plan for the band. something like this when we're done. I think that's pretty just the way it is. Now we're going to lay our strips down. We put our top pieces down, which are the butterflies. Our middle piece, which is the brown. And then the bottom, which is the orange. And I think that makes a lovely base page. Our next step is to turn this beautiful blue paper into a scallop using the recipe template. I noticed how this, from this point to this point, is about 11 inches, which matches what our sketch is calling for. So I thought it would be lovely to use this recipe template to make scallops. Our paper does have some directionality that we want to watch out for. But I also wanted a mat. I wanted my scallop to have this edge with this blue stripe. And so what we're going to do is what we did with some of our other recipe templates. We're going to cut through 2 layers at once. So let's walk through that process. First, let's note that our bottom piece, which is the stripe, is a 1/4 inch larger than the top piece. The second thing we want to note is that the direction of our top piece is going to be such that our scallops go in this direction. So what we want to do is to use repositionable tape and tape the top piece to the bottom piece near the top edge. So we want the top to be like this. We will later come down and take it apart and put the bottom piece there, so hopefully the scallops will match up. So we want to make sure that the top piece is lined up flush with the bottom piece. And we're going to use a small amount of repositionable adhesive to keep the two together. So we want to put the small amount of repositionable on so that the papers do not slide while we are cutting. Again, aligning the top edges flush with one another. So this recipe template is very symmetrical. We could easily find where the center is. And because we've already cut our paper at 11 inches, we don't even have to worry about trying to find the center. The edge of the paper comes to these inner edges of the recipe template. So to make this a super easy, we're going to just align the top of this inner side of the recipe template right there and the top of our paper up flush against that edge of the recipe template and the sides of the recipe template. Very, very simple. And then we're going to pull out our pencil and we're going to draw the scallops. Now, 2 factors that are important in drawing these scallops include we're going to draw on this underside of the template shape. the underside, not from this side. We're going to draw from there. And what you're going to discover is, of course, some breaks. We will address the breaks after we've gotten the majority of our shape made. This spot right here on our template, on the left and the right, will sort of mark our beginning point. Or we can go all the way here to the bottom of the light blue line, because it's going to come out to be close to halfway down. And now I'm going to draw. I'm only drawing the pencil lines on the top layer. And so we have our points. Now, one of the really nice things about this, we want our peaks to match. So we can come in and use these spots right here on our template from the top side, and notice how they align very nicely. And then we can use those to draw these two peaks. And I, of course, got it off a little bit, but that's what erasers are for. Let me get that a little better. Okay, eraser, white eraser. And if you're comfortable enough, you can even freehand it. So here is our cutting line for the one side, and now we repeat it for the other side. Once again, we align the template right here in the top, over here in the corner. And we can use this a little bit to help get our little peaks by sliding the template down. And we can also use the template, rotate it a little bit to cover in these little gaps on the side. So now that we have our two layers, we're going to begin our cut. And I'm just going to start here, right on the side, and cut along my pencil lines. The recommended way is always to hold the scissors steady and move the paper. There are a lot of variety of scissors out there, so if these are not the best pair for you, I would encourage you to look into others, including scissors for people with arthritis, left-handed scissors, scissors that have a micro tip blade but bigger circles to put your fingers into, because cutting can be a rewarding experience. So here's our first scallop. And now we'll cut the other one. And of course, perfection is not required. You can also do things to distress the edges to make it look like, okay, on purpose I want this to not look perfect. I really do like that this particular border is not fully 12 inches long. I like the variety of having something of different size. So now we have our borders. I will take a moment and erase the pencil lines, and then I may consider some ink. A white high polymer eraser is my favorite for erasing those pencil lines. It's not a requirement that you do that. And now our next step with our borders are to pull them apart because we used repo, and we can put them back together. We'll add some more repo for a stronger, and I can do it two ways. I could pull this all the way down, but I actually think I want it to go with a little bit of an edge here and there. Here's our layout with the pieces in place. Our next step will be to adhere each piece to the layout. I'm really liking this. And this is how the final layout will be uploaded to the virtual crop. Comparing it to the sketch, I selected photos on the left. That was one horizontal and one vertical, so I was able to find photos for that. My photos are also mostly the same size. The outer mats are 4x6 or 6x4. Because I prefer a more narrow mat, I only trimmed 1/4 of an inch off my photos. This photo actually came in this size with the white mat already around it, which prompted me to put white mats around the other photos. The sketch also calls for 3x4 matte photos. These two photos were actually 3x4, and so I trimmed 1/4 of an inch off of two sides of that, and that gave 1/8 of an inch mat around these photos. However, instead of a photo in this position, I found a journaling mat. I'm not sure what collection it came from, but it said grateful for, and I covered it with a sticker from the Totally Tonal's pumpkin collection of stickers. And then I found a few embellishments from Vintage Chic, this ticket here, and this mat here, which I'm using for cluster base. And then I used one of my favorite punches, the cruise ship border punch, and just punched one ship. I might add a title here, although the sketch calls for a title on the right. But I have to confess, these two pages will not be side by side in my album. I frankly think they look fine as a standalone, and I'm looking forward to making this layout again. If you would like to see me make more videos using recipe templates or sketches, please leave a comment below. Have a great scrappy day.